Welcome back to Sports Tuesday. I am Steve Manderson. My featured guest tonight is a man of many years of experience in the world of baseball, 28 years of experience, as a matter of fact, as a player, a scout, and front office executive. He's been involved with several teams in that span. The California, now the Anaheim, or now the Los Angeles Angels, the Yankees, the Expos, the Tampa Bay Rays, the LA Dodgers, and the Colorado Rockies. He is an author, and the name of the book is Do You Want to Work in Baseball? And this is a fascinating book, and how to get involved in baseball from the front office level. And his name is Bill Geivett. Bill, how are you?
Great, Steve. It's a pleasure to be on your show. You know you've arrived when you can be on Sports Tuesday. That's for sure.
I thank you. Oh God, I thank you for the kind words. You have done a lot of things in the 28 years of experience here in all phases: player, scout, front office executive. Tell us your years as a player. Now, you basically, a lot of your playing years was in the minor league system?
Yeah, I played all through college, all the way through my senior year. I was drafted 4 times, but, you know, school is very important to me and our family. And so I was going to graduate, and I knew that I could, it looked like anyway, I could go back and continue to play in college, and I would always have professional baseball to begin to play at some point. I was fortunate that way. So I continued on all the way through my senior year in college at UC Santa Barbara, and then from there went on and signed with the Angels, but played throughout the minor leagues in AA. I already had a screw in my shoulder holding that together, and I was playing with a broken hand, and then I blew out my knee. And back in the old days, you know, it wasn't like these guys that go in for a scope and they're back playing, Steve, in a couple of weeks. I mean, for me, it was an 18-month rehab, and for a leadoff, more of a speed guy, I was going to have to play in a knee brace the rest of my career. So I thought it was definitely time to hang it up and go coach. And I always thought, even as a player, all the way back to when I was in high school, someday I want to be coaching and be a college coach and do that thing. That's what I was always looking to do. So I was always asking advice and watching coaches, even as a young player. I mean, in high school, I was always studying the coach to try to figure out how I would do it someday.
Now, the teams that you pretty much were associated with, 3 of them actually started out as expansion teams. Well, the Montreal Expos for one, Tampa Bay, and Colorado. Now, was there any advantage in working with these expansion teams at the time? What, in terms of moving up the ranks, what would be the advantage with those teams?
Well, I don't know that Tampa Bay was really the only one where I was there from the beginning, and the first time we did anything was basically in club history. There were, as far as the other teams, Montreal had been a major league club for a while, so it was an established club.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado, well, by the time I got over there, they had been playing for 7 years by the time I got there. So they were an established club as well, albeit a young team, so to speak, but new to the league, but had been playing and in the division. And I certainly got to see them when I was with the Dodgers playing against the Rockies and all the good hitters that they had. But I don't know if there's an advantage. I think it's always good to start probably with any company from the ground floor. So if you're with an expansion team and everything's just getting going, I think there's a camaraderie amongst all the employees from ownership all the way down that you've been here from the beginning. I know the Rockies have that. I know Tampa Bay there's a pride that all the I'd say initial employees have that they've been with the club since the inception. And I know those feelings run deep, and they really feel like they're part of the club no matter what department they work in.
Well, the reason why I was saying more of an advantage with those teams as compared to the other teams you were involved with, the Angels, the Yankees, and the Dodgers. Now, these are organizations that go back, the Angels, they go back to the 60s. The Dodgers and the Yankees, those are two of the most prestigious teams in Major League Baseball. And to try to get a job in those organizations would probably be a lot more tougher than, let's say, the Expos, the Rays, and the Rockies.
Well, I think people can look at it that way. They're all tough to get a job in. The competitive nature of what's out there now and the applicant pool is certainly talented. And they are competing well prior to when they turn in a resume or a cover letter trying to get a job. So no matter what club it is, they are equally difficult to try to get a job in. And they're no different because of how long they've been around. It's all very, very tough.
Okay. The Expos. Now, you was involved with the Expos minor league system back then. They eventually folded, and they became the Washington Nationals. What happened with the Expos organization that had pretty much caused them to fold?
Well, I think it was maybe a little bit of a lack of interest for the people up there in Montreal and the municipalities that are all around Montreal to put together financing for a new stadium. I think that was the big one. I think the Big O and Olympic Stadium where we used to play, I think its time had kind of come and passed, and people in Montreal, especially during the summer when they have good weather, don't want to be indoors. And so there was a big call to get a new stadium, but the government really didn't want to do that. And, it was kind of declining as far as attendance-wise, and so that led to, Major League Baseball and the people up there deciding that they'd be better off in another market. But there's a definite love for baseball in Montreal. I think if they did, there's been a lot of talk about having a new stadium and a downtown stadium, which would be excellent for the city, and to have a retractable roof and that type of thing, I think would be perfect for that. And I think you'd see it. I know there's a lot of interest in Montreal, but I think that would have been a much better scenario than playing in the dome of Olympic Stadium. So, but it was a great time up there. The city loved baseball. They're putting a Hall of Fame member in Vladimir Guerrero. I remember the day where we brought him over from our Latin American Academy. I was farm director at the time. So we bring him over, and I said, I got to take a look at this kid. We're playing the Mets over in St. Lucie, all the young kids. This is rookie ball, Gulf Coast League. We're going to watch the kids play and that, and then the Florida State League is playing up in Kissimmee against the Astros. So we're going to watch the young kids play at 1 o'clock and then go up and watch the night game at 7. And this is my first look at the kid, and this Guerrero kid, they throw the first pitch fastball, he hits it over the left center field fence against the Mets. I said, that's pretty good. Next time up, he had a rocket off the wall in center field. And I said, come on, fellas, let's get in the car. Time to go. I think we've seen enough here. And we went up and watched the night game. But he was something else as a young kid and really all the way through. And, to see, that's the one great thing about some of the jobs I've had, to see not only the young players come in, like for Vlade to come from the Dominican Republic over to the United States, play extremely well, have a great major league career and all that, but it's that point in time where you see them working in the minor leagues so hard, and it's a tough mountain to climb to get to the major leagues, and then to see them realize their dream and play in the big leagues, no matter how well they do, just getting there is such an accomplishment. And to stand on how many nights, the most nervous I've ever been in my job is not like when we were in the World Series or anything like that. It's feeling the nervousness for those kids when they finally get their chance in the big leagues and wanting them to perform so well.
Now, I was going over a list of executives and where they started out entry level, and I'm going to mention a few of them here. Billy Beane, the president of the Oakland A's, he started out as an advanced scout. Now, how much work does it involve for someone who was an advanced scout to now call the shots with a major league team? What is the process in that situation? This was an advanced scout. Does he have to have the kind of background when he's interviewed? Does he have to have the kind of, let's say, a managerial type background or a corporate background to advance to a position as president of a major league team?
Well, I mean, Billy Beane is certainly very talented and intelligent, has a great background as far as not only baseball as a player, but just a student of the game, even at that time. So he started at a very high level. You usually don't see people start in baseball as their first job as like an advanced scout. That's usually something that you work to, and you have to have definite experience. So certainly I think Sandy Alderson was there at the time and felt like Billy would be great and that type of thing because he knew him from the past and plugged him in the job. So that's not the typical way you go about it as far as looking for jobs. I have in the book, it's not, that's not normal. That's not something to really discuss. More to probably, Steve, to discuss is you're a student in college and you have a definite interest in baseball, whether you play or not, and some want to get started either in the front office, scouting, or in player development as a coach. And that's really what the book is about, is trying to help people organize all of what they do to prepare themselves to stand alone amongst a sea of applicants. And how do you separate yourself to the point where somebody's sitting at a desk and they can say, hey, these are the ones that I want to take, a further look at. And not something gets passed off to the side and you get a form letter reply, like I'm sure a lot of people out there have had in the past, and you know that there's really not a lot of interest in you except that you're just getting something that's basically a receipt that they received your information. But how do you put your, not just your resume and your cover letter but your experiences, how do you put all that into a package that is going to appeal to somebody working for a major league club. And like I said before, there's a tremendous amount of talent out there, and there's a tremendous amount of people that are preparing themselves to try to get a job in baseball. And some of the kids that I talk to, and I'll do that with, people email in after they've read my book and they want to talk a little more, and I say, bring it on, send me what you send to major league clubs. And I say, don't get sensitive on me because I'm going to hack it up.
Yeah.
I want a clinical exam, I'll give you one. And since you've read my book, I feel some responsibility to you. And they send in their resume, and I go through it, and I tell them, and then I'll kind of give them a little consultation on here's what you need to do, here's the experiences that you need to go get. Because a lot of them, you can't just go get a job now saying I'm the hardest worker and I'm passionate about baseball and I've dreamed about being baseball all my life. Maybe back in the 50s or 60s that worked. That don't work anymore. You better
interviews have heard that line all the time. It's like, in other words, what makes you any more different? What makes you more exceptional than the average person that's come back and said the same thing to me?
That's right. And Steve, the biggest thing that they can do is have a specialty. If you want to be a pitching coach, then where's all your pitching coach advanced study? Give it to me. What are your theories? What's your philosophy? You can't just say I pitched in the minor leagues or I pitched in college or I even pitched in the big leagues. That's the way people are nowadays. So what can you bring to, I know what you did, but how can you help our pitchers? If you want to get a front office job, where's your statistical research? Show me some of your studies, and not only what your research was, what were your conclusions that you derived? And how did you come to that conclusion? And those are the things people need to see. You have to have evidence. There has to be evidence of what you can do. You can't just go in and talk your way in. You won't even get to the point of talking to them because you can't get to that point anymore because you need to show evidence to get in the room to even interview for a job. And some of these people I talk to, there's a kid who's a sophomore in college, and I was talking to him, and he was like business econ major, he said. And I said, well, that major's good, but at the same time, you need a little bit more in terms of statistical research. So I know you have statistics for econ. That'll be one of the prerequisites you have to take and things like that. I said, but you need some math in there. Now, he had very little baseball background. I don't think he played in high school, but he really had a love for the game. And I said, so what are you doing math-wise? And he says, well, I'm taking regression theory and regression analysis in the math department so that I can get ready to do those studies. And I just said, I thought I had them, Steve. I thought I got them. What are you doing math? Me, I'm going to just drill right into him. And he comes back that he's studying regression theory, which for anybody that has been around a major league office, you do that a lot. At what age is this player going to start to regress? Is it 30? Is it 31? Is it 32? Is it 33? Definitely probably by 33, you can count on their last best year. But those are the types of things that you do in a major league front office, and it involves people that really know how to do that and are used to or have some type of math background. So the competition is fierce. Here's this kid in college, and he's preparing himself. He's preparing himself for a job in a major league front office.
Good point. Now, I have 3 managers that all World Series managers, by the way. John Farrell from the Red Sox, he started out as a pitching coach. Then you had Joe Madden, currently with the Cubs. He started out as a minor league coach. Then you have the legendary Tommy Lasorda, who started out as an area scout, went on to become a World Series winning manager, Hall of Fame manager, and now he's the senior advisor for the Dodgers. Now, they all started out pretty much, pitching coach, area scout, minor league coach. They've had years upon years of experience in baseball. With their hard work, is there a reason? Is that the reason? The years of experience that they've had in baseball, moving up the ladder, is why they've been so successful?
I think a lot of it has been for them. Yes, I really do. I think you can't discount experience. The only difference I would say is that some people can be experienced but don't really learn from all the things that are going on around them. I think in those three, and John Farrell started as a college pitching coach in Oklahoma, I believe. And so, for them to see every level and to understand every level, and certainly in terms of player evaluation, because you're at the big level, player evaluation is the biggest thing that you can bring to your ball club and to the front office there. But I would say that for them, certainly all three of those guys are not only people that went through all those jobs and all those experiences, they all studied and learned from them. Now, Tommy Lasorda I've been very close to, and we worked with the Dodgers and worked together a lot. So Tommy, I got to hear all the stories about Branch Rickey and the old Dodgers and how they did things, and you can tell just by his recall he was studying it back then.
And yes.
Tommy was off as, like somebody's nice grandfather and this and that now. But, when you talk to him, you really understand, and he seems so gregarious that it's, baseball's fun and this and that. But when you really get in there and talk to him about scouting or player development or managing a game at the big league level, he is a scientist. I'll tell you that. And he doesn't come off that way, but he really is that way. And, I could name a lot of them, whether it's Felipe Alou, and he started out in the minor leagues. And Joe Madden was, in fact, I was with the Angels when Joe was one of our coaches in the minor leagues.
And he was one of the first ones to be pretty much into the data. He used the computer all the time to get out the information that he needed to prepare for his games.
That's right, and I referenced Joe in the book about kind of that specialty thing, Steve, that you've got to have a specialty. So, really pick one aspect of the game and try to specialize in it, because that's what's going to excite people to bring you into the organization, that they feel like you can make an impact in that area. Joe was that way, and in the book I tell a story where I'm talking about branding yourself. What is your brand? What do you bring if a major league club is looking to shop for different items? What is your brand that's going to make them purchase you? Because that's basically what they're doing. And Joe was exactly that. He branded himself as a statistical analysis type of manager, the first one, and took a lot of flack for it. But lo and behold, here comes the guys going to Tampa Bay, and there's a new owner, and they're looking for a new approach in a new way. Well, there's the guy out there who's one of Mike's coaches, his bench coach out in Anaheim, and they go get Joe Madden. And that's the thing. That's where that branding of what he did is he really solidified in the game as his reputation of a guy that was a statistics guy. And he was going to manage with advanced statistics as part of, what he had to bring, and that's eventually what helped him get that job in Tampa Bay. And so that branding of who you are and what you can bring to a major league club is really, really important. Your specialty, your brand, what you bring, those are all things that people need to develop, to spark some interest in a major league club and just to interview and then potentially hiring you if they like you.
Yeah, and he turned around and took a Tampa Bay team that was pretty much bottom basement, and they won an American League pennant in 2008. He goes over to the Cubs and performed the miracle of all miracles, a World Series championship after, 108 years? And so his brand paid off.
That's right. And then just like anything, when you're kind of out there first and there's a lot of people are going to shoot at it, which they did. I remember hearing all the stories and stuff on Joe and, he's into the numbers and this and that, and some old school guys were kind of down on it a little bit and that whole thing. You can see how the rest of the game is kind of caught up. I mean, there's a few people that have jumped out there, whether it be Billy Beane, and there's many others that, have been doing more statistical analysis for a very long time. But Billy's probably the most prominent because, they wrote a book and did a movie. But, he's one of a few that were out there at the time, and Joe Madden on the field is certainly one that does it. But there are other managers as well that pay particular attention to a lot of numbers, and certainly with the amount of research that whether it's Baseball Info Solutions or some of these other companies do to that clubs can use as an add-on to what they do statistically as well. As far as the research, there's more numbers and information out there than anyone would ever need to play a baseball game. I can assure you that.
Yes. Let's talk about a gentleman named Theo Epstein. This man, I've always been fascinated with of what he's accomplished. Bringing World Series championships to two of the most prestigious teams in Major League Baseball, the Boston Red Sox and the Chicago Cubs, brought a World Series championship to the Red Sox in 2004 after an 86-year drought. And we just talked about the Cubs in 2015 after a 108-year drought. Theo was the GM of the Boston Red Sox, and Theo became the president of the Chicago Cubs. Just what brilliant mind is Mr. Epstein?
Well, I think that's, you just ran it down there. You got to feel like he definitely knows what he's doing. But beyond it, I think it goes beyond that, Steve. I mean, I remember hearing the stories when they were in Boston. Those front office guys, they were a younger crew, and a lot of them were single, and they all lived in a house in spring training. And they said, I imagine almost like a Silicon Valley startup. They said they would stay up all night. They were talking about their team. They were going through all that stuff, and that little front office group was working in there day and night, trying to figure everything out with their club. And that, that when I heard that story, that one kind of, okay, because I didn't really know Theo. I'd met him, talked to him a little bit here and there, but nothing where we've ever been close or anything. And then a few years later, I'm at the SEC playoffs, the conference tournament in Birmingham, Alabama. So I got to go from there to go watch the ACC tournament because I had players before the draft that I was scouts with. our scouts wanted me to see. And during that conference tournament time, guys like me end up flying around on 6 o'clock flights everywhere trying to get to these tournaments, sometimes a day, trying to see some of these players the last look before the draft. And so I'm in Birmingham where the last game starts at 9 o'clock. We're going to watch all that way to midnight, and I got a 6 o'clock flight in the morning. So I basically an hour, get packed, head on over to the airport, and I'm there about, 4:45. It's almost 5. Got a 6 o'clock flight. I'm going through security. I'm putting on my shoes after I took them off, and I look over, and there's Theo doing the same thing as me. And so I'm not the general manager of the club. I'm, running scouting and player development. But at the same time, when I looked across and I see him a little bit before 5 in the morning, people can talk about, all the figuring out a formula and doing this. A lot of this is effort and hard work. And that's what he showed me there. It wasn't just some guy sitting around in an office trying to do whatever. He was pounding the pavement just like the rest of us. And to see that meant more to me as a guy working for a club, and the respect I have for him, and not only his accomplishments are what they are. Those are undeniable. But when I hear that story about how they worked in Boston, and then I see him on a, gonna get on the same 6 o'clock flight I am, knowing he's going to the next conference tournament. Those are things that they don't show on MLB TV. Those are the things that aren't very glamorous, and you got to dig in, and you got to be dedicated to what you're doing. And it's not glamorous at all. And here he is doing the same thing as a big-time general manager. And that meant a lot to see that and know. So now I root for him.
I think a lot of others do, too. I know he's a hero in Boston, and he's definitely a hero in Chicago, that's for sure, for what he's accomplished. And that is totally amazing for what he has done. And I tell you, to do it with those two organizations that at that time was starving for a championship. I mean, really starving. I mean, that was amazing. That's definitely amazing.
The first one they won, he was kind of new to the scene. He got named general manager. They ended up winning right away. So people tried to discount it and not give him as much credit. But then when they won again, it's like, okay, now you got to give him credit.
Yeah.
Let's go. Now you go. Then he goes and wins in Chicago. What do you want now? I don't know.
That's right. That is right. There's a part of the book, there's a chapter in the book that in reading it, made a lot of sense. The title, at first I was like, oh, what does that mean? And it's called Delay is Not Denial. Off the bat, tell us about, you talk about Clint Hurdle a lot. What, in meeting this gentleman, he was a former player, successful manager. What is your description of Clint Hurdle?
Wow. I mean, he's, right up there of all the people that I respect in the game. He's right at the very top. I mean, I got to put him with Felipe Alou and Tommy Lasorda and Dayton Moore and, a few of those guys. I mean, he's right there. Throw Theo in there, although I don't have the personal experience with Theo, but, watching that from afar. But Clint is, I think if I could describe him, he's a person that really cares about the people around him. And he genuinely cares about the people around him and tries to make everybody better. And that's what he does. I think that's his mission in life, to tell you the truth, Steve. I think he's all in for everybody around and he's trying to help them in whatever way he can. And so, I mentioned, this is a guy that had a lot of success as a major league manager, but at the same time, just how he deals with the scouts and everybody in the organization. I don't care if they're with ticketing or wherever. If anybody needs help, he's the first one in line to try to help. And I think there's a lot of that. The chapter delay is not denial. I'm sure there were times where Clint didn't know if he would ever be a major league manager, if anybody was ever going to get a chance. And then he was. And then, the story in the book or what I try to do in the book is that was one of the lines he would say to players when they weren't going to make our major league club. Both Clint and I were the two guys that would bring them in and tell them, hey, you're not going to make the club. You're either going to AAA or in some cases, unfortunately, we'd be releasing the player. And Clint would always say with the younger players that, we're close and had a legitimate chance to make the club, but we're going to have to start the year in AAA. The delay is not denial. We're not saying that you can't play on this team. We're just saying to start the year, you're not going to be on the team. And that's
how tough is it? Well, no, I was going to say, how tough is it to tell a player in spring training trying to make the ball club, the 25-man roster, and he's, in your opinion, he's busted his tail, he does all the things he's done every day in spring training, but for some reason it's not good enough to make the roster. How tough is it to tell that individual, hoping that he doesn't totally lose his confidence, making him feel that trying to make him not feel that he'll never come back and get another shot at the major leagues. How tough is that?
Well, it's all relative, right, Steve? So that's difficult, and it's a difficult circumstance. I'll grant you that. But I'm an old farm director. So it's relative to, let me ask you this, how tough do you think it is to release a 21-year-old kid in A-ball that is going to go and, try to get a job at Home Depot or somewhere else because you're basically taking his dream away? That guy.
Yeah, that is tough. Yeah, you're right.
Well, it's a lot tougher than that. When you're saying, hey, we don't want you anymore, we're going to release you of your contract with us for a younger kid that has only played and maybe didn't even play well in A-ball. And you got this other guy who was close to making the team in the big leagues and will probably go to him at some point in May or June. That's a little different than that guy you're sending home. And so for me, it's difficult, but when I'll tell you right now, somebody asked me about this the other day about how difficult it was, and I told them the very first time I had to release players out of minor league camp, I did it in Montreal, Lantana, Florida, and I would drive from major league camp to minor league camp, and I had to go down to minor league camp, and I would always do the releasing. I felt like with the respect for the player, that I had the respect for the player, that I would be releasing the player. If we're going to release them of their contract, I would do it personally. And it would just be me and them in the room. And so I would call them in and release the player, whatever. The very first time that I did it, I had 15 players that morning. And after I went through 15 players and released them, I was driving back to Major League Camp, and I stopped off at a little coffee shop, sat down, had to give myself a piece of pie, Steve. When you don't feel good. A little piece of pie and some coffee. And I had to really, Steve, I had to self-evaluate about what's going on here. Do I really want to do this where I'm taking the dream away from these kids? Is this a job that I feel good about doing or whatever? And in the final analysis I came to as I finished that pie, that, you know what, I started feeling a little better after I finished it. But then I said, you know what? For some of these kids, it is time to go do something else. Because I really didn't feel like, and I could be wrong, but I really didn't feel like for the majority of them that they were going to be able to play beyond what they were doing now. And they needed to go and get on started with something else in their life. So now I'll flash forward a lot of years to Long Beach State is having their alumni golf tournament. I used to coach there. We had Jason Giambi and Steve Traxel and all these guys there when I was there. But I go back to the golf tournament, and one of the coaches is there, and he goes, hey, I walk in, he goes, hey, he tells all the younger coaches, he goes, you don't even know who this guy is. And he's yelling at the younger coaches, you don't even know who this guy is. This guy is Bill Geivett. He's the reason why I'm here today is because he released me with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he told me, you know what, it's time for you to get started in coaching and go do that because you are maxed out as a player.
Wow.
And I very rarely, I don't even remember saying that because I would very rarely say that, if at all. But, and he goes, that's when I started. I said, you know what, I didn't like what he said at the time, but I was thinking that night is he's right, is that I've stalled out. I'm not improving. I'm not getting any better. In fact, it's time for me to move on. And, you know, that's the thing. So he took it. I didn't even know I said that, but apparently that's what he got from it. And at the same time, I think that's what you kind of get to. But those in the minor leagues are a lot more difficult, Steve, and a roundabout way of getting back to it is that they're a lot more difficult than a guy who's probably going to be at the major league level in a month or two. When you put it in perspective, it's a lot tougher when you know you're basically ending a career.
Well, let me ask you something. With some of these people that they feel that they'll never make it back to the majors, do you guys check up on them periodically to see what's going on, to see if they, if they are still sticking with it, or would you know pretty much right away if they just totally gave it up?
No. Most of those guys, when you're sending them out, you're just sending them out to AAA. You're getting those game reports. You're watching the games. Now you can watch them on TV. And you're getting reports every morning or at night. You can go on the system and see the game report. You'll get the manager. You talk to the manager. You're constantly watching the AAA club. Because there are times, you've got to be prepared in the front office of knowing that, okay, if there's an injury or whatever, who are we bringing up as a left-handed reliever, right-handed reliever, a starting pitcher, an outfielder, who's ready to go to bring up, because all it takes is, a bad slide at second base and somebody's going on the disabled list and you got to call somebody up for the next day. So you're always prepared. Now you'll have conversations with the manager and the coaching staff and the farm director and everybody else, but in your mind, you've kind of figuring out who would be the candidates anyway to be called up if something were to happen. So you're paying just as much attention to the AAA and sometimes a couple of players at AA. About what they're doing and, when they're starting, all that type of stuff to kind of keep, that's basically your, for lack of a better term, kind of your JV team, right? So here they come. If somebody gets hurt on the varsity, here you go. You bring them up and they get their chance. And, all that factors in. So you're spending as much and maybe even more time on what's going on at AAA because the major league manager's there with the big league club. So
Who's more determined to keep it going in their career, in their minor league career, to make it to the major leagues? A position player or a pitcher? Who is more determined? Who would be more serious about coming, especially when they hear the news that they've been sent down? Would a pitcher be more determined to fight their way back or a position player?
I don't think it's a function of what position or if you're a pitcher or not. I think it has to do more with the way you are personally. But I think they're all fighting, Steve. This is not if you're getting all the way to the point where you're at AAA, you're battling. It's like a mountain, and they're climbing a mountain from rookie ball all the way up. And the closer you get to the top, the less players there are, so that thing kind of narrows up. And it's steeper up there, and it's more jaggedy up there when you start getting.
Yeah.
And
because the reason why I asked that is because I have seen players that have spent at least 10 years in the minors. They're coming up, and some of them are already 30 years old, and I'm like, really? I mean, that's wild. I mean, you're actually a rookie at 30.
You know what? It's wild, but it's like what I used to tell players all the time. Don't let a bunch of old guys sitting around in a room determine your fate.
Yeah.
And just like you said before, delay is not denial. And so if you look at it as, hey, they're delaying me, but eventually they're going to wise up, and they're going to call me up to the big leagues. And that's the way you got to look at it as a player. I mean, it's not really position or if you're a pitcher or not, but it's more of how you look at that thing. The people that are the most persistent, the most determined, and the most dedicated, given a certain level of talent, can do it. They can do it. The people that want to fold anytime something happens, and I tell players that, certainly with coaches, I mean, I could almost look at A-ball players, and the first time something didn't go their way, and they're out blaming other people and doing whatever, I'd just go back to my office and I'd say, unless this kid really matures a lot, it's not going to work out for him. Because that's not the way you respond. And being a player is like taking a punch in the stomach every day. People are telling you you're good enough at this, you're not good enough at that. You see other players getting called up, you don't get called up. This guy got this, and he signed for that, and they took him in the draft there. And there's plenty around you to focus on that has nothing to do with you. But if you really want to dig into what you have to do and just almost try to ignore everything else around you and dedicate yourself to your career, given a certain level of talent, you can do it.
Okay. I want to talk about Bob Brenly. Back in the day, about 20 years ago, was a broadcaster, and the Diamondbacks were looking for a manager. They hired him. No coaching experience at all. Former player.
Right.
Wound up winning a World Series. Okay, at the expense of my Yankees, but we won't talk about that. But this year, Aaron Boone, same position, broadcaster at ESPN for years, no coaching experience. He gets hired as the new manager of the Yankees. Now, what was it about his resume, Boone's resume, that sold Brian Cashman and the Steinbrenners?
I don't know, probably kind of like Brenly, the same kind of way. I just think that, both. Now let's go back a little bit in terms of their credentials. Maybe not as a coach or manager or whatever else, but as a player, both those guys had been around a while as a player. And so they understood the level and what it took to compete and play at the level. So from there, they've got a very good base. And then beyond that, what they did post-playing career was to be around the game and study the game. Brenly is a broadcaster in the same way with Booney. He was out there and doing his ESPN thing, and we'd be out in Arizona spring training. There'd be Booney hanging around the backstop and doing whatever, watching and doing his research for the job that he had to do on ESPN. So for me, both those guys, a very good foundation in terms of the level and what it took, both very, very smart guys. And I think from that respect of just knowing, somebody, you probably have to know the person like they did. I'm sure Cashman, they had Booney there as a player, and with Brenly, he was running around with the people there with the Diamondbacks for a while. To know the personnel and to know the people there, and then know that type of personality and how they dealt with people would be good in managing at the big league level. And that, for me, I understand it. I get it that, the big league manager and all they have to do now in their job, it's much, much different than maybe what it was before. And there's a lot of things that are maybe off of the field that the manager has to take care of, like whether dealing with guys like you that want to interview them and talking and doing all the stuff that they do.
That's true.
There's a profile for the type of guy you want, but also one that kind of understands the players and where they're at and what would be best for the team. And that environment that they would create or lead as part of that team. And I think that's the way they're looked at. They have the baseball background. They have the intellect. Let's inject him into the clubhouse to form the type of environment that we want because of his personality and how he deals with people. And, I can get 15 pitching coaches in here arguing about, some aspect of pitching mechanics. I can get 15 managers that'll argue about what they would do if they would put on a hit and run here or there. At some point, that becomes a little cloudy, how they game and what they do. The biggest part of a 162-game schedule is how the leader responds to either positive or negative influences as it relates to the team, and how he deals with all them to keep them collectively as a group striving to win a championship. And for whatever reason, the people in charge felt like those two were perfect for their situation, and I don't think you can argue with it.
Well, no, in Arizona's case, no, because they did win a World Series in 2001, and Aaron Judge right now, after starting the season 9-9, they got one of the best records in baseball with that explosive lineup and everything. So, yeah. He seems to be making the right decisions, although at times some people tend to question it. But, look, when you're, this team right now is reminding me of 1998. So I'm not complaining. I'm a diehard Yankee fan. Speaking about Cashman, how impressed are you with Cashman being the GM for over the last 20 years? Definitely the longest tenure in the major leagues as a GM, because, GMs pretty much they're life expectancy in that position sometimes is maybe 5 to 10 years. That's about it. This man is going on over 20 years. What is his best asset in maintaining that position for so long?
First, just let me qualify this in talking about how I viewed Brian Cashman. I mean, the longest tenured GM in New York. I mean, that is crazy.
I think I made a mistake. Wasn't it Walter Alston?
No. But Walter Alston, was managing with the Dodgers. But I'm talking about, right now, of all the general managers that are out there, I think he's the longest tenured.
He is the longest tenured, yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, and he's doing that for the Yankees in New York City. That's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
To play in New York, they know how difficult it is, and they know the scrutiny that's involved with that. And then to have a general manager do it, you got to be doing a lot of things right if you're going to be being the general manager for the New York Yankees for that long. So
and he's been criticized a lot over the years with certain moves that didn't work out and things like that. But it's worked out well for him, and he obviously, especially with this present team and how he's rebuilt the farm system, has been totally amazing. And it's a farm system right now of which can last for at least the next 5 years or so, maybe even longer.
That's right. And that's what I mean. That's where the strength, I think, for what I see in all of these front offices, if I were ever to go in and say I'm going to try to evaluate this, is how strong is that with scouting and player development. And because that's where their direct link is to the health and vitality of the club moving forward, is through scouting and player development. So when you see, and when I read, and I haven't seen a lot of their clubs or evaluated a lot of their players, but when I read the way people are writing about them, and because I know if they showed anything less, they would be getting hammered on that. So to know that they're getting a lot of compliments on that to me means a lot more, because you got to remember a few years back they had changed the rules now, so they're slotting in terms of how much you can pay a kid.
Yeah.
How much each club can do it. Back in the old days when we were doing this thing, especially in Colorado or Montreal or Tampa Bay, not so much with the Dodgers or when I was with the Yankees. But, those are the clubs that had money. I'll throw Boston in there. I mean, you'd go out and they're beating you financially at every level. They have more minor league coaches. They have more scouts. They're paying kids down in the Dominican Republic and Venezuela more. They're not just with a payroll, Steve. They're killing you on everything. They have, whether I remember when I was at the Yankees that those protein shakes were starting to come involved, and the boss bought 1,000 of these battery operated blenders for the players to have so they could drink protein. It's stuff like that other clubs couldn't do. But now that they're slotting, and to see the Yankees doing well with scouting and player development, Damon Oppenheimer's running the scouting part of it, to know that is healthy and working, I can tell you, that to me is where you evaluate the general manager. There's going to be trades that people don't like, and there are going to be trades that don't work out, and there's going to be signings that are difficult. But all the pressure and all the scrutiny and under a microscope in New York, for him to be around that long is really, truly amazing. But I'm going to tell you what, for every Yankee fan, if you want to know, and this is about my book again, Steve, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to learn how I was trained with the New York Yankees when Bill Livesey was there running scouting and player development, it's in that book. Because I go, how do you get But then a lot of these academic kids that don't have a real good sound foundation in baseball, the actual playing of the game, I have chapters on scouting. I mean, I think 4 chapters on scouting and 8 on player development. And what I go through that is basically take the reader to learn the lessons that were taught to me from the perspective of the person learning it.
Uh-huh.
So I tell stories of how what I was taught and how that kind of played into how I kind of view things or how it was taught to me, and relate, intertwine these stories that kind of show how I was taught and what I was taught. So for anybody that wants to learn how we were taught to be a New York Yankee scout before Bernie and Derek and Mariano and Jorge and all those guys showed up, I better throw Pettit in there too. But that's in the book. And you can really learn what it's like to, or how they taught us to scout. And that was really, this is back when I was working for them in 91, 92, 93, and a little bit in 94 through the 94 draft before they ran off all those championships.
How great a scout was Gene Michael?
Well, an excellent scout. I mean, that's really what he came. Now, he was, he was one of the bosses when I was there. Well, I shouldn't even say bosses because there was only one boss there.
Yeah, right. You got that right. Yeah.
He was a manager. Yeah, but, really, really good. I didn't get a lot of personal contact with him, but from all that I heard and what everybody would tell me, he was, that's how he rose to where he rose. His specialty was being able to pick players. And when it gets right down to what you're doing, and he could pick them. So, it's interesting, though. But I think people were really, and even then I've got an old report off of A-Rod when he was in high school, and I scouted him. And I put that report in the book so people can see it. A little bit light on some things, but really I don't think there's another book out there that goes into the detail of trying to, if somebody wants to learn how a scout looks at things, that's how you do it from a clinical standpoint. There's a lot of what goes on in baseball that with analytics and all that they don't understand. What I was trying to do in writing this book is preserve some of the scouting and player development that I learned from Bill Livesey with the Yankees and Felipe Alou and Tommy Lasorda and Davey Johnson and all these people that I was fortunate to be around. There's a qualitative study as well. There's not just quantitative. There's a qualitative study that needs to be preserved, because I think some of that is just getting wiped away, and people view that those types of that qualitative study is something that's almost being ignored to some degree, except for our time scouts and old time player development people. And a lot of times I don't think they're the best. I don't want to act like I'm putting anybody down, but I don't think they're the best at really explaining how difficult and what type of process they go through to determine which player is better, or which player you'd want to draft, or which player do you want to take in the first round. I don't think they're the best at doing that sometimes. But I do think that, and that's what I tried to do in the book, is explain that there's a lot more to this than a coach going out of Yankee Stadium and hitting some fungos. I mean, there's a lot more. There's a lot more knowledge and a lot of help for players and a great perspective that they bring to the game that somehow is getting discounted in today's world.
You worked with the Yankee organization under George Steinbrenner, the boss, passed away in 2010. He's now taken over. Principal owner now is his son, Hal. Do you see, is there a difference in the Yankee organization now from when George ran things to now what Hal is doing?
I can't really speak to that because I haven't been in the organization. There are a lot of things that go on that people try to look from the outside and determine, but you don't really know unless you're in there. All I can speak to, I know that, there was a level of intensity. I mean, when the boss was around, I mean, the real offices were in Tampa because that's where the Steinbrenners lived. And I can tell you right now, the level of intensity, I think what he brought to that organization, to me, is I don't think people really understand, but he brought even more than the will to win. It was your job to win.
Right.
And paying you to win, he's giving you all the resources, so when you sign up with them, you're going there to win. Period. That's it. End of story. And I think to ingrain that into the DNA of an organization is something special. It really is. And, yeah, people may not like the way he, yelled at some employees or did whatever, but he ingrained into the DNA of a Yankee that we pay you to come here to win. That's it. And that, I can't tell you how powerful that is, because I think anybody who knows, and I would assume that it's the same way, that when you go over there, you're going over there to win, and nothing else is acceptable. And, I mean, to me, I'm assuming, when I go out and either from afar, you kind of watch them or you see and I mean, I know the scouts and everybody must have that level of intensity if they have the type of players in the minor leagues that people say they do, and watching their major league club winning games, I'm assuming that the Suns are doing it the same way. But Dad, the boss, I mean, I'm gonna tell you what, I've put plenty of balls in a curveball machine, or I've give plenty of sacrifice bunt lectures and stuff like that with players. But I have never been more nervous than when the boss was standing there watching me.
I couldn't imagine.
Hey, see, let me tell you something. The old story when you were around that Tampa complex was, Jackie still works for the Yankees, but when he would pull up into his thing, you remember the old speaker phones with like intercom where they, Steve,
that's
you got a
true.
phone call. No, you could hear it everywhere. Well, Jackie, when he pulled in, Jackie would get on that intercom and say 911, or the Eagle has landed. Then you knew that the boss was on campus, and you better be paying particular attention to what you're doing. So, but that level of intensity, that level of we're here to win, and that's it. I think that is so powerful that I don't think people give him enough credit for the legacy that he had to really ingrain that into the DNA. And every Yankee fan has it, and anybody that works in the organization, they should have it. Because and I know I have to think they do without being in and around there. So.
One of the last questions I want to ask you before I let you go, and this has been fascinating. I'm so happy to have you on the show. Derek Jeter, new kid on the block when it comes to ownership of team, of a major league team, the CEO of the Miami Marlins. Will, in your opinion, will he be eventually successful at turning this organization around?
Well, I mean, to guess, because that's what I'm doing, I would think so. I think it's all going to depend on the people he surrounds himself with and what they're doing from a scouting and player development standpoint, especially with the type of major league payroll that they tend to have, unless they're going to, increase that a great deal. I think that I have no reason to believe that he wouldn't be. I think he's probably finding out how difficult it is, especially how much scrutiny you get for every little thing when you're in the front office. They love you as a player. They love you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
When a major league club does well, they give the players credit. When the major league club does bad, they give the front office the credit, if you want to call it that.
That is true.
It really is, but that's what when you sign on to that type of thing too. And he's part owner and doing the thing, and it's definitely I'd say every club has their issues, no matter what. They just have different issues, but there it's certainly going to be, at least as it relates to the past. Financially, they're not going to have the payroll that that some other teams, especially the one that he used to play with, has. And they have issues with travel as well. Travel is difficult. People don't understand that really as much. Seattle and Miami, anytime they're getting in a plane, especially when they go to the West Coast, or changing a lot of time zones and there's a lot of disruption with that. If you're a club like in the middle, say you're St. Louis, everything's kind of 3 hours away. So you're getting on a plane and you're flying out to the West Coast, and there's a lot of disruption involved in there, and in just that normal grind of 162 that can be a little bit more difficult. That's why you see the Yankees don't ever seem to play well on the West Coast.
No, they never did. Yeah, you're right. They don't. Yeah. I don't like when they come up to Toronto either. Yeah.
Right. No, but that's the thing. I mean, it's interesting. I'm rooting for him, because I remember watching. We drafted him when I was there, and then I got to see him play in A-ball when I was running around, and he was playing for the Tampa Yankees. And so I've seen him, as a younger kid, and then to be able to watch all his, his greatness at the major league level, and I'm rooting for him down there. But I don't. It's a tougher situation than most. Anytime you're dealing, that's the thing. I've been so fortunate to work for the Yankees, to work for the Dodgers, but to also work with an expansion team, and then Montreal, which we had a low payroll back then, and then Colorado that was more in the middle, maybe lower middle. But you got to remember, when I was being with Montreal, I mean, we went from, our payroll was going to go from $9 million to $20 million. So we had to trade Larry Walker, Marquise Grissom, John Wetland, and Ken Hill all in one winter, because we could not have the payroll get all the way up to close to 20. Come on.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. How does that nowadays? That's true. That is true. Last question. In your opinion, without getting you in trouble, what organization in the major leagues, in your opinion, is the worst operated organization? I don't want to get you in trouble now.
No.
Who do you feel lacks what it takes to be right now a successful organization?
I don't even know if I could even figure that out if I had to. I don't think anybody, the amount of talent that's out there with all the clubs it's all pretty similar. A lot of it is, do the breaks kind of go your way or don't they? Did you make a couple bad trades that are going to happen if you're active and trying to improve your club? And then the free agent market and all that involves, where you're overpaying, and all you're doing on the free agent market is when you get a player, you've spent the most amount of money or given another year that nobody else would do. And so, but you're trying to improve, you're aggressively doing that to try to improve your club. But I mean, and I'm being honest here, Steve, I don't know that I could really even look at one club and say that they're just on the wrong path type of thing. I think you end up finding out when you go to different organizations and you see baseball people or people that have been in the game and study. I mean, these people are working 18, 19 hours a day, all year long, if they're in the front office. Front office people don't get an off season.
That's true. It's 24/7. That's true. You're right.
I mean, I got stories of me, and there was an older Yankee guy that we had, a name from the past, Dave Silvestri, who was with us, and we signed him. I remember signing him on New Year's Eve, come and play in Montreal. And that's what I mean. You just, when you're doing that type of thing, and I mean, everybody's doing it and everybody's digging in. You know, some of the circumstances that you get involved with a franchise just are kind of out of your control. I mean, you can't determine your payroll. The owner determines your payroll. And,
good point.
You know, a lot of things that are out of your control. You just try to do the best with what there is. But I have too much respect, I think, for people. And I've seen, whenever I've gone in each organization, I run into people. You just run into good baseball people everywhere. And so for me, I don't know that I can say, well, this organization's on the wrong track and da-da-da. The only way you could even, if you thought that, the only way you could really know that is to be in there with them.
Good. Great job on that answer. I know the listeners are like, oh, man, I wanted to hear some dirt. You did the right thing. That's how you do it, Bill. That's it. Let them figure it out themselves. I love it. I love it. You know, they was waiting. Oh, yeah, what team? What team? No, you got to figure it out yourself, people. Okay.
And judging by the internet, they're trying to figure it out.
You got that right. The book is entitled, Do You Want to Work in Baseball? Where can the people get the book?
They can get the book on Amazon, or they can get the book on, go to my website. We even have some chapters on there they can read. Chapter 1's a story about me and Tommy Lasorda at the winter meetings. I like that one a lot. But it's my website is InsideBaseballOperations.com. InsideBaseballOperations.com, or just the book is on Amazon. Do You Want to Work in Baseball?
Okay, and you're currently doing some consulting. Tell us about that.
Well, I've been doing some consulting things, but now I'm kind of switching over and starting a company. It's called I'm a Player. And, Steve, what we do is we have baseball scouts all across the country. We also have former college softball coaches. And what we do for the baseball or softball player is that if they sign up with us, we'll send a scout out to watch your daughter or son, and we grade them out on a professional scale for baseball and at Division I standards for softball. And we write that report up. We give you a development plan of what you should be doing. The scout will talk to you about their impressions. You know, normally even for players, you know, that think they're getting ready for the draft, the scout will come out to watch them, make their evaluation, and leave. They never talk to the player. So for this, it really gives the player not only a player development plan, but it gives the colleges a legitimate report to read and to look at so that they can determine if they want to recruit that player or not. And a lot of the reports that are being thrown out now, the college coaches tell me they just delete them because they can't trust them. And so for us, we're a realistic service trying to find these players the best fit of colleges that are out there where they might be able to play, not just the biggest names, but really getting the kids to think, we need to get the kids to think more about, okay, this is where you're going to live when you go to college. This is the type of school it is. Is it a commuter school, or is it, a small private school? You're all going to live there. What is your major in terms of academically, and where do they fit in that? To think a little bit more than the baseball program or the softball program, and really understand that it's a choice that's going to impact your life, and you shouldn't take it off the baseball program. Although that's a big part, obviously, but there's a lot more to it than that. And we go in and try to help. I think a lot of what I've seen after doing this, and we've got kids all across the country, in Hawaii, wherever else, that we counsel and try to help out, is that there's a lot going on as far as playing. There's a lot as far as really trying to develop your skills. And you can go out there and pitch all you want. If you got a bad delivery, you're not going to get any better. And,
that's great.
Yeah, so we really try to take the people that have been at the highest levels and help them to influence what's going on in amateur baseball, because it's definitely needed. I can assure you of that from what I've seen. So a lot more people that have been at the highest levels to help younger players. So very happy with it and doing it. We're doing it for the right reasons, trying to help some kids, and so far so good.
Great. There's a website for that. Can people check it out?
There is, and I'm a player. IMA is how it's spelled. Player.us.
Okay. That's great. Bill, this was a pleasure. I had a ball and got educated on what goes on in the front office and all over baseball. You are welcome on Sports Tuesday anytime. And we definitely will talk down the road and talk some more front office.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate being on here, and it's an honor. So thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. I thank you. Take care, and God bless.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
All right now. Sauce Nation, that is Bill Geivett, former player, was a scout, front office executive, and author. The book is entitled Do You Want to Work in Baseball? Please get it. Check out his website, imaplayer.us, and this was a thrill. So that is it for me. And until next week, as I always say, be good and be safe. Take care, everybody.
Get at me for beats, y'all.